Okay, good afternoon, grade 12s. I'm Christelle Barnard. I am an English subject specialist here in Bloemfontein. And today we're going to take a look a little bit at paper 2, at a few exam tips to help you to prepare for paper 2 on Thursday. I hope that you are all doing well and that you have had no surprises in your exam paper so far. So, yes, as I've said, we're going to take a look at paper 2, English First Additional Language, for Thursday. Now, you know that there are different genres that schools could have selected to teach during and that you could have studied during the course of the year. So you would not have studied all the books that you're going to see on the screen. You know that there are different genres. So I'm going to look at generic things that covers all the genres, no matter which genre you are doing. I'm going to try and use some examples from all the different genres to show you how certain questions, how you should approach certain questions. But for today, let's start with a few basic things, and I'm going to run through these few slides, the slides at the beginning of the session, because it's basic instructions and information, and I'm sure that your teachers have already told you and they've drilled it into you. But unfortunately, when we get to the marking center, we still see that the nerves got the better of some grade 12s. And that they did not do what the instructions have asked them to do. So that's why we're quickly going to run through the instructions. When you get your question paper on Thursday and you turn over the page, on the second page you're going to get instructions and information. It's a heading that says instructions and information. And the very first line says, read this page carefully before you begin to answer the questions. So before you start, go to the genres, before you go to the questions, you first read these instructions carefully. I'm not going to look at all of them. I just copied a few on the slide that I want to emphasize. The first one is, do not attempt, don't try to read the entire question paper. This question paper is about 24, 26 pages long. You're only going to answer about 6 pages. So you do not have time to go through the whole question paper. You're wasting time as it is questions that you will not be able to answer, right? So to know what to answer, you consult the table of contents. That will be on page 3 of your exam paper, on the following page. And then you mark the genres that you have studied at school. And if it's familiar to you, if you know short stories, then you mark short stories. If you know My Children, My Africa, then you mark My Children, My Africa. And those page numbers, those are the page numbers that you're directly going to page to. Right? And then they also say, read the questions carefully and answer as per the instructions. Right? Then they give the next instruction and they say, when you get to your section, for example, if you studied the drama Macbeth, if you get to section B, the drama, and question 3 Macbeth, every section has its own set of instructions. So when you get to that section that you want to answer, please read the instructions for that specific question as well. Good. And then something that might seem silly, but keep your numbering exactly the same as the questions. Don't add additional numbers, don't change the numbers, and make sure that you not by accident skip a number. Sometimes you skip a number, you number wrong, but you keep the questions in the same order. But what that means is your answer does not correspond to the question number on the marking guideline. So be very careful that you do not leave out a question number and that your numbering is exactly the same as on the question paper. Good. And then a request, start each section on a new page. It just makes it easier for the marker to know, this is the end of a section and here the new section starts. When the marker totals the total for the section, then it is just much easier to write down the totals. So that's a request. You have enough paper in your answer book, as I'm sure that you have discovered by now. Good. And then they give the instruction they said that your time management, how much time you should spend on each question. You're going to answer 2 questions. Each question has a total of 35 marks. And you have a total of 2.5 hours to complete this paper. So if you divide that in 2, it gives you 75 minutes per section. And that's more than enough time to do justice to every single question. And then the last plea, please write neatly and legibly. Remember, the marker do not know you. The markers do not know you. They do not know your handwriting. They're not used to it. So they have to decipher what you write. You want to make it as easy as possible for them to mark your answers. So please write neatly and legibly. Okay, that is the first part. That's page 2, as I've said. There are more instructions, but those are just a few that I'm highlighting. Then if you turn to the following page, page 3, you're going to get the table of contents, the index. And the first thing that they're going to say is that this question paper consists of 4 sections, but you only answer 2 sections. So you have to choose 2 sections. And the 2 sections that you are going to choose, I'm saying it again, are the sections that you have studied at school. Good, and this is just some an idea of what the table of contents look like. They give you the section, they give you the name of the novel or the name of the drama, and then they give you the total number of marks, and then they give you the page number where that question starts. Now remember, one question, if you did the novel, if we look at section A, novel, just below that it says, answer any 1 question. There are 2 questions in section A for the novel. Cry the Beloved Country and The Strange Case of Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. So if you did one of them, you answer that one, only one. The same with section B with the drama. You choose one, either Macbeth or My Children, My Africa, if that is the genre that you have studied at school this year. But now I want you to pay attention. If you studied the short stories and the poetry, there is only 1 question, right? There will be an extract on two extracts. 1 extract on 1 short story and another extract on another short story. You have to answer both of them. Because if you look at the mark allocation, this example that I'm using, the first short story was Next Door. You will see that the total mark allocation for Next Door is only 18 marks. So if you're only going to answer that first extract, it means you throw away half of the marks. You do not even attempt to answer the rest of the question. So make sure. The same with the poetry. There will be 2 poems. 17 marks or 18 marks on the 1 poem, and then 17 or 18 marks on the second poem. You don't choose which one you want to answer. You have to answer both. It's only in section A and section B where you can choose which one of the dramas or novels you have to answer. But in section C and section D, the short stories and the poetry, you answer everything. Otherwise, you're going to penalize yourself. Okay. That's very important. And then just to assist you to make sure that you've answered the correct questions, then you go on, then on page 4, you're going to get a checklist that looks something like that. So when you've answered your questions, you can go and check that you answer. Which sections did you answer? Did you answer section B, the drama? How many questions did you answer? 1? If yes, then you make a tick. And then the poetry, how many questions have you answered? There's 1 question with 2 extracts. Did you answer both of them? You give a tick. So that's just that checklist is just to help you to make sure that you've answered everything that you needed to answer. Okay, and that's the instructions. Now, right, quickly something on time management. You've noticed by now that the exam in the morning session starts at 9 o'clock. But at 10 to 9, you already have your question paper in front of you, and the instruction is given that you can read through the question paper, but you're not allowed to have a pen or a pencil in your hand. Just read. So the 10 minutes, use the 10 minutes before 9 o'clock. And even though you think you know all the instructions, carefully read through all the instructions once again. And then if you've read through all the instructions, then and there's still time left in this 10 minutes, then you turn to the first question, the first genre that you have studied and you're going to answer, and then you read those instructions. So use the 10 minutes before the time start to just casually, in a relaxed way, read through your instructions. Then, remember I said you have 2.5 hours, and that gives you 75 marks for each section. And I promise you, it's more than enough time for you so that you can read carefully, you can read extracts and questions more than one, you can go back and read the question and read your answer to make sure that it matches. Okay, now how should you use this 75 minutes per section? My advice to you is first, now it's 9 o'clock, you have your pen in your hand, you're ready to start writing. And you opened at the question that you want to answer. First of all, you remember you've already read the instructions, right? If you want to make sure, you can read through them again. But now you read the extract, everything regarding that extract. Before the extract in the block, they give you a clue in brackets, right? To give you more or less an idea, like a short summary in a sentence, what this extract is about. Read everything in that extract. At the bottom of the extract in your right-hand side, you're going to see Act 1, Scene 4. Or you're going to see Book 2, Chapter 17, for example. Or you're going to see Next Door. You're going to see where this comes from, where this extract is from. So take a look at that as well, because that's important. So now you've read the extract. Now remember, this extract doesn't mean it's a comprehension test. The answers to the questions is not in that passage, right? The passage is there to help you. The extract, you have to place it in the story or in the drama. You have to be able to know this is more or less in the middle, this is after, this is happening, this is towards the end. So the extract is given to place yourself in the drama or in the novel. It gives you clues, right? It might not give you the answer flat out, but it might give you clues as to what the answer can be. And then, very important, in order to be able to place this extract, where in the drama, where in the novel does this fit in, when does this happen, you need to know the sequence. You need to know the story, and you need to know the sequence of the events. How do things happen? In what order do things happen? If you know it like that, then that extract, it will help you answering the questions. Good. Now you've read the extract, okay? Then you go and you read through the questions, and with a pen or a highlighter, you underline or draw circles around keywords. Obviously, the instruction word, the verb that tells you what you have to do, and then other keywords that will tell you what information you have to look for. And then also look at the mark allocation. Right. Normally they give you line references. They will say, refer to line this, and then they will quote the line or the piece in the line that they want to focus on. Do not ignore that. Go and look at that line. Go back to the passage, to the extract, because sometimes they do not quote the whole line. They just quote the beginning and the ending. So go and read it so that you have all the information before you try to answer the question. Then, if you have time, read the extract again, right? But then, after that, you go and you're ready to start answering your questions. Go and take a look at the keywords that you've underlined, okay? Go and look at the line references. Look at the mark allocation. And then you write down your answer. And then I want to give you a tip. After you've written down your answer and you've put that full stop and you think that is enough, then I want you have enough time. Go and read the question again. Go and look at the keywords and compare it with your answer. See if your answer answers what you have written down. Does it answer the question? And that is very important. And again, look at the mark allocation. If 2 marks is allocated to a question, it's not enough to write one short sentence. I always tell the learners, at the marking center, we're not like Father Christmas. We just do not give away marks for free. In the language, you have to write 1 fact or 1 idea equals 1 mark. So always take a look at that. So you have to write enough in order to get 2 marks or 3 marks. Okay, that is just an idea on what you can do and how you can approach reading the extracts, reading the questions, looking at the line references when you answer the questions, when you get ready to answer the questions. Now we get to what is very important. What do you have to prepare for Thursday, right? I know that some of you are still writing accounting tomorrow morning, or Wednesday morning, I think it's Wednesday morning, and some learners are still writing, I think, an EGD paper Wednesday afternoon. But Thursday, you are writing, Thursday morning at 9 o'clock, you're writing this literature paper. So if you prepare for this paper, what do you need to prepare? And I made a list. I looked at all the past papers and I made a list of questions that frequently appears, that appears almost every year. Sometimes the phrasing is a little bit different, but it's the same aspect that is being assessed. Right, so I'm first going to take a look at the novel, the drama, and the short stories, right? For the novel, the drama, and the short stories, you need to know the story. That's very important, the plot. You need to know the main events, what happens. You need to know when do they happen, the sequence in which they happen. Right, that is important. So you need to know the story. Then, very important, you need to know the characters. And there's quite a lot you need to know about the characters. You need to know who they are, all the detail. If they tell you about age, if they tell you where they were born, if they tell you what they are doing for a living, if they tell you if they have siblings, everything about that characters, all the details you need to know. Then you need to look at what do they say and what do they do, right? What do they say and what do they do in certain circumstances? Because what they say and what they do gives you an idea of the type of person that character is. In other words, we call it characteristics, character traits, or certain qualities of a person. Is the person stubborn, for example? You look at what they do, and if they do the same thing and they don't want to change, you can say, those actions tell me that that person is a stubborn person. So it's important to look at what the character does and what the character say. Right. Then you can also look at their reaction. How do they react to certain things? Right? If there's a momentous thing that happens in the story, how do they react? Because that also gives you an idea of the type of person they are. And then, very important, we'll take a look at the following two a little bit later on in more detail. You will get a question on tone of voice, right? And you will get a question, or I believe, I'm convinced, because if I look at the past papers, on state of mind, the state of mind of certain characters. That's important, but we'll take a look at it. Right, then also, setting. In the last couple of years, that question has been asked, the setting. You need to know the setting of the story or the play in general, but you also need to know the setting for specific sequences, specific passages. And that's why it's important to know the story, to know the sequence of events, to know where they move. Okay, so plot, characters, setting. And then if we move on, title. The title tells you something about the story. There's a reason why the author chose that specific title. What's the link between the story and between the title? So go and take a look at that. Themes. Themes are very important, and I cannot think that you will not get a question on themes. I'm sure that you will get a question on themes in some form or another. Very important, figures of speech. Now, there's a lot of figures of speech, right? There's a list of them. I'm quickly going to run through them. There are even more, but those are the main ones, right, that you need to know. And then irony. Irony is also important. They like to ask questions on irony. And you will notice that if you go and you study all the questions, even the books that you haven't studied, if there's a question on irony in the one drama, there will be a question of irony in all the other genres. So that's why it's important to understand what irony is. Good. And then if we stage directions, if you're studying, if one of your genres, one of the questions you have to answer is a drama, Macbeth or My Children, My Africa, they will ask you a question on the stage directions. What we mean by that is they will say, if you were the director of this play, what would you tell the specific character to do or to how to say? You will direct him on, and that refers to tone of voice, facial expression, body language, that you have to put yourself in the shoes of the character and that you try to say, if the person is angry, this is what the person's face, the person will frown, the person will point his finger, he will ball his fist, he will grab the other character by the shirt. Or you have to put yourself in the situation and you have to ask, if you felt like that, what would you do? How would what would your body language be? And that is the direction you will give the actor who plays the character. Be careful. You're not advising. You're not giving advice to the character on what they should do if they have a problem. It is physical. It is on what should they, facial expression, body language, tone of voice. Right. Good. Now, if you study poetry, all of these elements that we looked at now, that I just quickly listed, all of them is not applicable to poetry. But for poetry, if you study poetry, you have to prepare the following. Again, the title of the poem. Go through the poem line by line and make an analysis of it. What does this line mean? What is the meaning of the words in this line? What does it refer to? Is it literal? Is it figurative? You go and look at the figures of speech, all the poetic devices, the sound devices, onomatopoeia, alliteration, assonance. What type of poem is it? I know that you're studying those of you who study poetry, there are 2 sonnets that you've studied. The type of poem, the theme or the message of the poem, tone, again, tone of voice, the speaker's tone when the speaker says this line, or the mood of the poem as well, or the mood of the speaker. That is what you should focus on preparing when you prepare for poetry. Now, I'm just quickly going to run through a few of the figures of speech. Now, there's an illustration. I'm going to try the guy on it's on my left, so I hope it's on your left as well, with the red shirt with the S on it. He says to the smaller one standing next to him, you're as skinny as a rail. Skinny means you're very thin. Okay? A rail, you know a rail is just like a little metal pipe, so it's very thin. And then the other one looks up to him and then says, and you're a mountain. Now my question to you is, what is that? What figure of speech is being used by each of these characters? I don't know if you can see that. Okay, if you see you are as skinny as a rail. What are they? They're comparing 2 things. He's comparing this small little thin guy to the thinness of a rail. Right. So, and there you see the word as. And if we compare 2 things and you use the word as or like, then we call it a simile. But the guy in blue, when he says, and you're a mountain, he is making a direct comparison. He's not saying, and you are as big as a mountain, right? He says you are a mountain. So he's still comparing the size of a mountain to the size of this guy. But he doesn't use the word as or the word like, and that's a metaphor. You need to know this. This frequently appears in the question papers. Okay, and then personification, there's an example. You know what's personification. The example that I have there, the brutal wind bullied the tree into giving up its autumn leaves. Now, personification comes from the word person. That is when you give an inanimate object, a lifeless thing, right? An object, the qualities of a human being, right? The qualities of a human can bully. We bully one another. People bully each other. So, but now they say that the wind is bullying the tree. So that human quality is given to the wind, and that will be personification. Good. Now we get, these three are the familiar ones, right? That's most often asked and used in the exam. But then we get something like hyperbole, right? And there is hyperbole is exaggeration, right? It's over-exaggeration. You want to make a point. You want to emphasize something. So, for example, if the person says, the walk was 1,000,000 miles long, obviously he did not walk 1,000,000 miles, but it was so far and he's so tired, it felt like 1,000,000 miles. So it's exaggeration. It's not as bad as that. I ate 5,000 pancakes for breakfast. Now, I like to eat pancakes for breakfast, but definitely not 5,000. So if a person ate a lot, right, and they're very full, and they say, I'm so full, I ate 5,000 pancakes for breakfast, it is an exaggeration. It's to emphasize how full they are, how much they have eaten. And then the last one, the bag of gifts weighs a ton. Now, a bag of gifts, what type of gifts would it be? It's heavy, but it will definitely not weigh a ton. So it's again to emphasize how heavy it is, but it's not literally a ton. So if it's exaggeration, then we call it hyperbole. Now we get an oxymoron, right? An oxymoron is a literary device, obviously a figure of speech. Now, we get two words. They're contradicting, they're opposite, they have opposite meanings, right? But you put them together next to one another. And if you put them together, you use them next to one another, you use them together, it forms a figure of speech. And that figure of speech is an oxymoron. For example, the word deafening. Deaf, you cannot hear any sound, right? Or something is so loud that it can cause you to be deaf. And silence when there's no sound. So they are opposing, they're contradictory. More examples of an oxymoron, known secret. If something is known, if everybody knows about it, it's not a secret. So they're opposing. Orderly confusion. If there's confusion, it means it's chaos. There's no order. So again, opposing ideas. Deafening silence we already had. Confirmed rumor. If something is confirmed, it means it's true. It's not a rumor anymore. So that is opposite ideas. And then awfully nice. Now, if something is awful, if something is horrible, it cannot be nice. Right? So that's also contradicting ideas. And that's usually used for emphasis, to emphasize the situation. So that's an oxymoron. The next one is a paradox. Now, a paradox is very close to an oxymoron in the sense that it also has to do with contradiction. But in this case, it's a statement, a sentence that contradicts itself. So in other words, you say the one thing, but then you just turn around and you say the opposite. For example, war is peace. Now, think, what is war? Is war peace? So that's contradictory. Freedom is slavery. If you are a slave, you're definitely not free. So how can freedom be slavery? Is slavery. Right, so those are examples of paradoxes. When it's a statement, where the statement, what is meant, doesn't make sense, it contradicts itself. Good. Okay, now we get to very important, tone of voice. A lot of you like to write, if you're asked, in what tone of voice is Isabel using when she says these words in line, whatever. And then a lot of you write high tone or low tone. Grade 12s, if you're going to write high tone and low tone, you can mark it wrong for the marker because it's wrong. It doesn't have anything to do with pitch, right? Tone in literature refers to the following: the way a person is speaking to someone, the way, the manner a person is speaking to someone else. Or how do you sound when you say the words out loud? I'm very agitated, irritated, right? The person is irritating me because they don't want to leave me alone. So when I talk to that person and I say, stop it, don't do it, leave me alone, right? That irritation, the way in which I speak to that person, what I sound like when I say the words out loud, show that I'm irritated. So I'm using an irritated tone. Okay, so it is a connection with how you are feeling at the moment. So tone refers to what do you sound like when you are saying these words. How do you say it to a person? If you're angry, if you did something wrong, and your mom says, David, what are you doing? Why did you do this? The way in which she's speaking to you, right, shows that she's upset, shows that she's angry. So if you listen to what she sounds like when she speaks to you, that is tone. Now, the go-to words that you use for tone, it doesn't matter what the tone is happy, sad, angry. Those are the three that you like to use. I just want to show you. All happy, angry, and sad cannot be used in all situations. You really have to go and think, what is this character feeling, right? What happened before this? What made the person or the character feel like this when they are saying that? That will determine the tone. There's a list of a few, right? There's a more of words that describe tone. Now, amused, humorous, angry. Okay, if you think for something is funny, right? You see something and you think it's funny and you would talk to that person, you know that you hear it in the person's voice. Sad, cheerful, instead of happy, cheerful. If you got a fright, horrifying, shocked, suspicious, optimistic, pessimistic, gloomy. So there's a lot. Frustrated. If you feel discouraged, despondent, those are synonyms. So take a look. Think a little bit wider than just happy, sad, and angry. Right. Okay, we're going to look at tone questions a little bit later on. So just remember what tone is. It's the way in which you say something to someone, the way in which you speak to someone. Also, what do you sound like when you say the words out loud? Now, another question that's very closely linked to tone is when they ask you, what is the character's state of mind in this extract? State of mind. Now, I looked up all the different definitions, but basically to try and make it as simple as possible is what mood is the person in when they're in this extract, right? You all know what's mood, okay? What are you feeling, right? It's not only, remember tone refers to what do you sound like when you say these words. But if my state of mind is anger, so the tone, and I speak to someone, then that tone will most probably also be angry. So state of mind refers to the character's mood, feeling. So you have to look at what happened before this. So what influenced the character to feel like that? What is he feeling? What is she feeling? Right? And why? Okay, so there's a list of them. You will see that some of them are very closely linked to tone as well. You can take a look there. Mad, lonely, satisfied, rushed, peaceful, hopeful, melancholy, right? A melancholy mood. It's a sad mood. It's a different word, a synonym for sad. Okay, so remember the difference between state of mind and tone. Tone is the sound when a person is speaking, right? And state of mind is the mood that the character is in. Okay, right. Now we get to what's important, and I know we have basically about 30 minutes left. So I'm going to rush through this. I've got a lot of examples. Might not look at all the examples in order to get through all the different types of questions. I basically looked at 2 question papers, just examples. I want to show you, you most probably worked out these question papers already, and that's wonderful. But I'm not doing it to see if you know the answer. I want to try to show you the types of questions, and I also, what do we look at when we mark, right? What do we credit? What specific aspects are we looking at? How do you approach to answer a question? Now, first of all, we're going to start with the easy ones. The very first question you will get in the drama, the novel, and the short stories is a mix and match, right? We call this this is a level 1 question, a lower order question. And the reason for it is because it's knowledge. You studied something, right? You studied this drama or you studied the novel, so you know it. You have the knowledge. You just have to recall it. You just have to remember it and write it down. So this is 4 marks, and these are easy marks. These are marks that you should get. Okay, let's see. There's an example from, this is an example from My Children, My Africa. So even those of you who do not study My Children, My Africa, you can see whatever you study. If you study Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde, it will be something similar. I'm not going to look at the answers. I want to look at the elements that they list. The question is, choose a description from column B that matches the name in column A. Write only the letter, the capital letter A, B, C, D, or E, next to the question numbers 4.1.1, and then you have the smaller case A, B, C, D in column A in your answer book. So you don't need to write out everything. You can just write the correct letters. I want you to look at what is listed in column A. Tami Mbekwana, Isabel Dyson, Davi, Anela Mialata. Okay, those are all names of characters. 3 of them are the main characters in the play, the only 3 main characters in the play. 1 of them is a minor character, right? We just read about the character once and how that event or where the character appeared or met one of the main characters and how it influenced the main character. But I want you to notice that it's names. Okay. Now look at column B. They say column B are descriptions. Owner of a Karoo pharmacy. So it means he's an entrepreneur. It means his job, right? What does he do for a living? He owns a pharmacy, right? Number B, Zulile High's gifted learner. So that's a description, something that describes one of the characters. Teacher who supports non-violence. It's also a quality that describes one of the characters. Inspector of Bantu education. Okay, inspector, that means it's his job, right? He's what he does for a living. And the last one, Kamde Boos debating team member. So that's also a description, something that one of the characters do, right? So all the mix and match questions will be based on characters, right? Mostly, if you go through all the question papers, you can see that characters are involved in this question. So what do you have to prepare in order to answer this? You need to know your characters. I've already said it earlier on when I said things that you need to prepare for Thursday. You need to know the characters. You need to know the detail about the characters. You need to know Tommy. Where does his parents live? Who is his father? Who is his mother? What does his father do for a living? What does his mother do for a living? With whom does he stay in Kamde Boos, in Brakwater location? So detail about Tommy. And then also their characteristics. What type of people? What do they like? What do they dislike? What do they do for fun? Who plays hockey? Who plays soccer? Anything. In which grade is Tommy? In which grade is Isabel? The different... all the details surrounding that character you need to know, because that is what you're mostly going to get in this question. Sometimes they add setting, an element of setting as well. So as I said, for example, they can say Tami Mbekwama, inhabitant of Brakwater location. So Brakwater location is a setting, right? So that you're going to match with the character who lives there. So for this question, it's an easy question, and you have to look at characters. Now the next one is the same. I'm not going to read through it, but this is from the novel Cry the Beloved Country, a question that was asked, the mix and match question. Again, look at it. In column A, you have names of characters. In column B, what do you have? You have either a description of the character, you have a quality of the character, you have something that the character does, what the persons do what they do for a living, what their job is. So that is the description. So something about the character you need to know. That if you know your characters and the details surrounding your characters, you will get these marks. Those are the 4 easy marks. It's something you have to study and you just have to remember. Now for poetry, sometimes they do ask mix and match, but they also ask for poetry, fill in. They give you this question. I'm going to open everything so that you can see it. This is a question, I think, on Spring by Gerard Manley Hopkins that you had to study. And I think it was asked, I can't remember if it was now May or if it was in November 2021. But they give you the instruction, complete the following sentences by using the words in the list below. They give you a block, and then there are words in this block. And you have to select these words and match them to the open spaces. Now, the words that they give you here is rhetorical, Petrarchan, sestet, symbolic, Shakespearean, octave, quatrain, couplet. Now, if you've studied, right, you took Spring and you studied Spring, your teacher would have discussed structure of the poem Spring with you, and you will have it in your notes. So if you study that, you will know that Spring is a Petrarchan sonnet, right, that describes the beauty of spring. And you will know that in the octave, it describes the beauty of spring. And then in the sestet, he asks where all the joy and energy comes from. And then we know, what do we call that? A rhetorical question. All of that information will be in your notes under structure that you would have studied. So for this question, this filling question with the poetry, it's knowledge. It can be knowledge on the type of poem it is, and it can also be questions regarding structure, the structure of the poem. So that's just the different kinds. Now another question, setting, right? There will be a question on setting. If you go and study the last couple of papers, there's always a question on setting. This is also an easy question because you're going to study it, right? And you just have to pick it out. It's perhaps not ordered. You just have to reshuffle the information. Now, setting, you have to remember, if you get a question on setting, setting involves two things. You have to discuss or describe 2 points, 2 things. Number 1, place. Where is this taking place? Number 2, time. When is it taking place? Good. Now, okay, there's I'm going to open it. Oh, sorry, it's a little bit more than what I wanted to open. But in any case, there I give you an extract. They can ask the setting question in 2 ways. I've said that before. They can ask you generically about for example, the play My Children, My Africa. As I've said, that it is in South Africa, in the Eastern Cape, in a fictitious town named Kam de Boer, more or less in the 1984, more or less in 1984. So that's generic, where the play takes place. But in the play, or for example, Cry the Beloved Country, in that drama, the characters move around. They don't stay in one place. We start off in Ndocheni, and then Reverend Khumalo leaves Ndocheni and he travels. All that trip, that journey is described in the novel, and then he gets to Johannesburg. When he arrives in Johannesburg, he travels until he gets to the to the mission house where he meets Reverend Msimango. And then Reverend Msimango takes him to Mrs. Ditebe's house. So they move. There are different places where they are in the novel. So sometimes they give you an extract, and then they want to ask you, what is the setting in that specific extract? And that's what I said at the beginning, why you need to know the story, and you need to know the sequence of events, the order of events in which things happen. Now, this comes from the short story Next Door. I'm just quickly going to read the extract. A door slammed next door. Now someone hammered on a door. Paul looked down into his microscope once more, looked at nothing, while a prickling sensation spread over his skin. He faced the truth. The man and woman would kill each other if he didn't stop them. He beat on the wall with his fist. Mr. Hager, stop it, he cried. Mrs. Hager, stop it. Now the question is, describe the setting of this extract. That's only a piece of the extract. So they don't want the whole story. They want this little piece. Where does this happen? When does this happen? So I've put there in yellow the word describe, because that means you're not going to only give one word. You're going to answer in sentences. Setting, you need to know setting, time, and place. And then extract, not in general, this specific extract. Okay, so they give a clue. Paul looked down into his microscope once more. There's a hammering at the door. So he's inside. Inside where? At school? If you know your story, you will know that he's inside his home, inside his house, his home, right? His mother's and father's home. He's there in his room looking through the microscope. So that's the answer to where. Paul is in his room. Paul is in his mother's and father's house. Paul is in Mr. and Mrs. Leonard's house. All of that describes where he is. But now when? There's no specific time that they said at 8:10 the door slammed. At 8:15, someone was hammering on the door. So time doesn't have to be specific. But when was Paul alone in his room looking at it through the microscope and all this noise was going on next door? When did this happen? When he was alone at home, when his parents went to the movies. When they left him alone at home, when they went to the movies, or when they went out. And there you have it. And that will give you your 2 marks. Okay, so setting, where, when, go and look for clues in the extract, be specific. Okay, I'm going to skip through the following setting questions. Okay, sorry, I think now I've skipped too far. I just want to, okay, quickly, I want to go to the next easy questions is a true or false question. This is also knowledge, right? They will give you the statement. They will ask you, why is the following statement false? You don't have to decide if it's true or false. They tell you it's false, or they will tell you it's true. And then they give you a statement. In this case, this is Cry the Beloved Country. James Jarvis attends the court case because he is the owner of High Place. Now, false means there's something wrong, some incorrect information in that piece. Now, you have to ask yourself, what is wrong? Identify what is wrong. James Jarvis attends the court case. Now you have to ask yourself, is that true? Did James Jarvis go to the court case? And if you studied Cry the Beloved Country, you will know that James is the father. Yes, he was at the court case. So that part is correct. Now, because tells me this is the reason. Now, the reason why he attended the court case was the reason because he is the owner of High Place. You have to ask, is that true or is that wrong? Is that a mistake? And if you've studied, you will know that that is wrong. He didn't go to court because he was the owner of the farm. He went to court because he wanted to hear the outcome. What would be the outcome of this court case? Why was this court case important? Why did he attend? Because he was the father of the murdered, of the deceased, of the murdered person. Okay, there I've basically opened the screen, and that's basically what I've just said. So when you get a true or false question, go and look. They tell you it's false. Go and look for the piece in the statement that is wrong, that is incorrect, and then you replace it with the correct fact. Good. I'm going to skip the other true and false questions. I want to move on. Okay, figures of speech. You're going to get a question on figures of speech. And in poetry, in the dramas and the novels and the short stories, you will get at least one. In the poetry, you will get more than one question on figures of speech. So it's important to know the figures of speech. How will the question be asked? It's split into 2, right? The first question will be, identify the figure of speech. And then the second part of the question will be, explain the figure of speech. They will refer you to a specific line, right? To a specific line or lines in the extract, and you study them. And now remember, you've memorized and you've studied all the different figures of speech. Metaphor, simile, personification, hyperbole, oxymoron, paradox, all of them. And then you have to go and match them. Which one do you see there? Okay, this is the first part to identify is supposed to be an easy question, and then to explain it is a little bit more challenging. Right, this is how they ask it. Refer to line this, And then the A part of the question will be identify the figure of speech in this line or these lines. Okay? Then the B part can be phrased in different ways. But the answer to all of these questions that I've written down there will be exactly the same. Explain why this figure of speech is suitable for 2 marks. Or they can say, explain the meaning of the figure of speech in the context of the extract. Or they can ask, explain the suitability of the figure of speech. Suitable, suitability, same thing. Explain the effectiveness of the figure of speech. It doesn't matter which way they ask it. The B part of that question will be, you have to explain the question. You have to explain not the question. You have to explain the figure of speech. Not give me a definition. It doesn't mean you're going to say a simile is a comparison between 2 things with the words like and as. That is not going to score you marks. You have to explain what is being compared, what qualities of the 2 things are being compared, and that will be the explanation. Right, so that is just the figure of speech. Okay, let's look at an example. This example is again from the short stories, but even if you didn't study the short stories, you should be able to identify the figure of speech now. I give you 2 lines. Next door, crockery smashed, filling a split second of radio silence. And then the tidal wave of music drowned everything again. Okay, now the question is, refer to line 12. So only line 12. And then the tidal wave of music drowned everything again. So if you look, but the previous line, if you read it, they say, next door crockery smashed. So for a moment, the radio was silent. No music, nothing. The radio was silent. And in that silence, there was the sound of crockery, plates smashing, breaking, plates and cups and saucers breaking, smashing. And now, then they say, and then the tidal, after that split second, and then the tidal wave of music drowned everything again. Okay, now the question is, identify the figure of speech in this line. The figure of speech will be in line 12. The tidal wave of music drowned everything again. Now, you have to ask yourself, what is a wave? Right? What is a wave? Waves in the ocean, right, that comes closer to shore, that comes closer to land. Sometimes when there's a storm, then there can be big waves that can wash onto the land. Okay, like a tsunami that destroys everything in its path. Now, what is a tidal wave? Will cover. A tidal wave is a big wave that will wash onto the shore. So it will cover everything on the shore. It will drown everything on the shore. It will destroy everything on the shore. Right. So now they compare that tidal wave covering everything, right? Almost like hiding everything. They compare that to music drowned. Okay, so what did the music drown? This noise of the fighting of the neighbors, it's like this loud music is covering, right, this fighting noise of the neighbors, so they can't hear the fighting. So that is what's being compared. This whole idea of the tidal wave washing away, right, washing over, destroying everything. In the same way, this loud music is covering, destroying the noise, hiding the noise that the neighbors are making while they are fighting. So that is how you answer the question on anything like that. The memo answer was like this. Just as a tidal wave, a tsunami destroys everything in its path, the loud music blocks out every sound. So if you don't have to say it in exactly the words as in the memo. But if we read it and we see, you explain it in your own words, but you understand the concept of what is being compared, then you will score your 2 marks. Okay, I'm going to skip, we only have basically a little bit less than 15 minutes left. I'm going to skip there's another simile. Okay, tone. Question on tone. You're going to get, definitely, you will get it in a novel, the questions on the novels, the dramas, and the short stories. Sometimes a poem lends itself to a question on tone, but not always. But always take a look at the speaker. If the speaker is saying something in a poem, you can ask, what is the speaker's tone? In what tone of voice is the speaker saying this? Again, I'm sorry, I see all my examples are from the short story next door. Remember what we said tone is, right? There's a reminder. Tone is the way in which a person speaks to another person. It's what do you sound like when you say something. Okay, right. Again, this is this piece of the crockery is smashing, and a split second the radio is silent, and then suddenly this noise, the volume of the music is turned loud. So it's like a tidal wave of music drowning everything. And then Paul stood by the wall, this little boy, he stood by the wall, trembling in his helplessness. Mr. Hager, Mrs. Hager, please, right? Now the question is, what tone of voice would Paul use in these lines for 1 mark? So you have to say, if he says the words out, if he says the words loud, Mr. Hager, Mrs. Hager, please, what tone of voice? Now you have to go and think. Remember, we said the way in which you will say something will be determined by how you feel, what's going on. That line, Paul stood by the wall, trembling in his helplessness. Those are clues as to what's going on through Paul's mind. What is he feeling? So you can say something like that he's scared, right? He's trembling with fear. It sounds as this noise next door sounds terrible. He doesn't know what to do. So it can be fear, it can be anxiety, it can be urgency. Please, Mrs. Hagen, stop, right? Stop fighting. So that will be the first mark. Remember, there might be other options. They're not going to give 100 options in the memo. The marker has to take a look if it fits into one of those categories. And then the second part of the question for your second mark, why? What is the reason? Why would Paul use this tone in these lines? Now you have to say, why is he afraid? Why is he filled with terror? Why is he trembling with helplessness? And they are fighting so badly that it sounds as if they are going to kill one another. So he's afraid. He doesn't know what to do. Or Paul is afraid because despite his hammering on the wall and pleas for them to stop, the fighting continues. So anything like that explains why he was afraid, why he was scared. Right. I'm just quickly going to, this is a one from my children, my Africa. It's in Act 2, Scene 4. Tommy has just told Isabel that Mr. M, he was an informant, right? That he informed on some of the students. He gave the names to the police. Now Isabel says, Mr. M did that? Tommy, yes. I don't believe it. It's true, Isabel. Now they say refer to line 1 when Isabel says, Mr. M did that? Now the question is, what tone would Isabel use in this line? So remember, in order to answer this question, you need to know what happens before this extract. To know what influenced, what did Isabel hear that influenced her or that makes her feel a certain way, and that you can hear that in her voice when she says, Mr. M did that. So what tone would she be used? She would be shocked. Disbelief. She can't believe that Mr. M would do something. She's stunned. She's surprised. She's questioning. Anything like that. And now the reason. Why would Isabel use this tone in these lines? Also, you need to know what happens before. What does Tommy tell her about Mr. M? Isabel finds it difficult to believe or to understand that Mr. M is an informant. And that's why she's disbelieving, why she's in shock, why she's surprised, why she's questioning. Okay, so that's tone. Remember tone? The way in which a person says something, the way a person sounds. What does a person sound like when they say the words? What happens to influence them to feel that so that you can hear that emotion in their voice? Okay, let's quickly go on state of mind. Okay, state of mind, we said the character state of mind or the speaker's state of mind in poetry, that refers to the mood, right, that the speaker is in. What is the character feeling? So normally the question will be, what does this extract tell you about the character's state of mind. Substantiate your answer. It will be 2 marks. First, you give the state of mind. The character is happy. The character is optimistic. The character is despondent. The character is angry. You first give the state of mind. And then substantiate, you give a reason. Why is the character feeling like this? So it's very similar to a tone question. They're very closely linked. There's just an explanation of state of mind. I'm not going to read through all of this. Yeah, you can go and take a look at the past question papers for state of mind. Now, characters, this is also something that you will get. They will ask, what does this extract or what does this line reveal or tell you or show about this character? So remember what I say, words, what do they say? How do they act? That tells you about the type of person they are. If you, okay, this is now a long extract again. But for example, this extract is where Paul, this fighting is going on and he's realizing they're going to kill one another, and he comes up with a plan on what can he do to try and stop them from killing one another. So now they can ask you, what does this extract reveal about Paul's character? Substantiate your answer. So it can be, you can focus on the fact that it upsets him that they are fighting this much, and that's why he doesn't want them to continue fighting. He wants to stop them. So you can say something like he's sensitive, right? And the argument between the neighbors upsets him. That could be a possible answer. Or you can say he's determined, right? Why? Because he wants to find a way in which he can stop the arguing. Okay, ladies and grade 12s, ladies and gentlemen, we're running out of time. We have only 5 minutes left. I just want to say irony, right? In irony, remember, irony is whenever a person says something or does something that is different or the opposite of what we or they expect them to say or do. It counts 2 marks, right? So the contrast, the opposite sides, this is what the person says, and this is what we think, but the opposite is true, or this is what happens, or this is what he really means. So both sides, the contrast has to be clear to earn 2 marks. You cannot get 1 mark. And then a tip that I can give you, in a question in an answer on irony, use the words but, however, or yet. For example, just the answer, Tommy wants to fight for freedom, yet he leaves the country. How can you fight for freedom if you're not there to fight, right? So he wants to fight for freedom, yet the opposite is true, he leaves the country. So there you see, yet, but, however. If you have that word, it means that you're considering both sides and that you will score marks. Okay, I apologize that we're running, I knew that this was going to happen. Remember the themes, normally themes count 3 marks. If they say, in this story there is a theme of envy, right? Envy, jealousy. Then you go and you think of all the examples in the story where you see envy, where characters are jealous of something, of one another. And that will be the points that you list to prove or to discuss the theme of envy. Okay, and then I think the last one, these are all themes, are open-ended questions. Right, it's 3 marks. And then the biggest tip I want to say, first decide, do you agree or disagree? Write that down. I agree with the statement. They say, for example, Mr. M, he deserves to die. Mr. M deserves his end, right? Ending, or something like that. Then you decide, do I agree with this? Did Mr. M deserve to die like that? Yes. Or did Mr. M not deserve? No. No. And then you go and give me reasons. Look for reasons from the play. What did Mr. M do? What examples can you find in the story or in the play to prove that he does not deserve? He was a good human being. He doesn't deserve to die like that. Or no, he did this and this and this, and this is why it deserves to die like this. You cannot give generic statements. You have to be specific. Link your answers to the text. Now, we ran out of time. It counts 3 marks. So if you say yes or no, it doesn't count. You don't score a mark for yes or no, but your explanation, your motivation, your examples, your links to the text to prove, your pieces of evidence. You basically have to have 3 pieces of evidence to prove that that is true or that it's not true. But remember the yes and the no. Sometimes you can think both are correct and you can have a yes and then you can say, but in some instances, this was like this. Okay, right. I'm going to quickly ask a question as an ending. You can win a t-shirt or a cap from MTN. And I'm going to ask you a very, very, very easy question. In order to answer, you go to the FS Education, the Free State Department of Education Facebook page. The Free State Department Education Facebook page. And then you just type in the comments your answer, your name, please, your school, where you're from, and then as well as the district will help, and then the answer. The question is, if you are asked to describe the setting of an extract, which 2 points do you have to refer to in order to score 2 marks? I'm quickly repeating it. If you are asked to describe the setting of an extract, which 2 points do you have to refer to score 2 marks? Grade 12s, I hope that there was something that can be of assistance in your preparation. And then I want to wish you all the best with your paper on Thursday. Bye-bye.